Krumwiede for coming in and showing us his gorgeous photos. He's going to explain everything about it and answer your questions. So just sit back and relax and enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Candy. I'd like to say thank you for everybody for coming out. I think you're in for a real treat. These pictures have been almost an obsession of mine, probably for about 20 years now. Since I found the box in my mother and father's basement and saw water damage all over the box, and was a little apprehensive about opening it up and finding out just what condition these pictures were going to be in. And the more I dug into the box, the more treasures I found, and I was delighted that they were in the shape that they were in. And I also got another treat when I found out that in the bottom of the box there were probably 25 or 30 small boxes of glass negatives that had never been, they'd been developed but never been taken to the next format. They were never put into print form. And I was at a loss at what to do with these, and I tried to scan them. I tried to do so many different things to start to reproduce these pictures again. And I just happened to run into Lisa Braley at our town up at the school. 2 years ago, was it, Lisa?
Yeah, I think so.
And she displayed the same kind of passion for the glass negatives and the antique photos that I had. So we developed a friendship, and she has been scanning all of the negatives with, I'm sorry,
Jim.
Jim?
Jim.
And the two of them have been working hand in hand, and now I am in the process of cleaning up these glass negatives and trying to make prints of them. And they're such a treasure because these are all my family members. What I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about the gentleman that took all these pictures. His name was August Reitz. He was a German immigrant, immigrated from Germany in 1903. Came into Ellis Island. He did it the right way. He wasn't an illegal alien or anything. He went through the process. He stayed in quarantine with he was 15 years old when he came into the United States. And he came in with one of his brothers. He had two brothers. One was Julius and one was Glenn. And I'm not even certain which one he came in with. I'm pretty certain that it was Julius. But from New York, after they went through their quarantine period, they took the ferry to the mainland, and somehow they ended up in Chicago. And I was lucky enough as a child, my parents lived right next door to their house in a little town of Bensonville. And Bensonville is on the western edge of the Chicago area. It's now being consumed by O'Hare Airport. There's a huge expansion project going on, and new runways going into O'Hare Airport, and they've pretty much devoured the whole town. Everything that my sister and I grew up familiar with our whole life is slowly being torn down, and there's hardly anything left. Our schools, the houses that we grew up in, the houses that we became adults and bought after getting married, and those homes are gone. The homes that my parents grew up in, the homes that August and Clara grew up in, or not grew up in, but they lived in Maywood, Illinois, and they moved out to Bensonville when Paula, August's daughter, Paula, and Clara, his wife, Reitz, they're the main subjects of these photographs. And you'll see the quality of these pictures And I've had a friend of mine that was a student, and she worked in UW-Madison in the art department, and I had her take a look at them, and she said that the quality of these pictures for the turn of the century when they were taken from most of them were taken from 1903 till about 1932. And she said the quality is just unbelievable. The composition of the pictures, the man was extremely talented. She didn't know anything about him, but she said that the fact that they're colored pictures to start out with is unbelievable, because all of these pictures that you see that are colored here, and we'll run the slideshow and you'll see just how many pictures there really are, but they're all made originally from black and white prints. The black and white prints, my great-grandfather August took the pictures, developed the pictures, enlarged them, and then he would sit and use watercolors to colorize these pictures. When you look at them, you'd never believe that they weren't colored prints, but there was no colored prints at the turn of the century. So this was amazing talent that I uncovered, and I was so blessed because I lived right next door to him, and I got to witness the transformation of a lot of these pictures, and I was probably a pretty strange child when I was and my sister will vouch for that.
Oh, of course not.
Because I was really drawn to August. I mean, at the time that I was old enough to really understand what he was doing and watch what he was doing, he was a pretty old man. So I was born in 49, or 48, sorry. Don't make yourself any older than you already are. But if you'll pass around this picture, that is August in his later years. This colored picture in the center up here is August at his prime when he was doing all these photographs. All these photographs were taken around the Chicago area. Most of them were taken at the turn of the century through the late teens and early 20s, 1900s. And you'll notice in some of these pictures that there's big open fields all over the place. There'll be cows and a pasture walking through a creek or a river. And August was amazing at the fact that he documented all these pictures with people in the picture, the time they were taken, and the location they were taken. And I started looking at these pictures as I tried to restore them to the kind of conditions they're in now. And I'd flip them over and I'd look at them and it'd say, oh, this was taken on Fifth Avenue in Maywood. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Chicago area, but Maywood is at the farthest western edge of the Chicago city limits. You go to Maywood and you walk across the street and you're in Chicago. And it's nothing but solid concrete from that point to the lake. But all these pictures show streams and little ponds and wooded areas. And I was kind of flabbergasted watching what was unfolding before my eyes. I was so blessed to be able to go up next door to him. When I was this young, stupid kid, I would go over and pester him, actually. I think I was a nuisance more than anything else. But he was very gracious, and he let me watch. And he had an old hand crank Victrola. in his house. And I would go over sit with him and watch him paint and draw. He did beautiful sketches. And he got to the point where he was getting pretty weak and he couldn't hand crank on the Victrola anymore. So I would go over and I'd crank up the Victrola and put the records on for him, and I thought that I was earning my keep. And it was okay for me to watch him do all these entertaining and marvelous things just because I got to crank the Victrola up. But here was this, I don't know, I was probably 10, maybe 12 years old, and I was sitting with this 70-some-year-old man listening to opera records on the hand crank Victrola. And you can't tell me that's not a little disturbing, you know. If you saw your preteen son kind of mesmerized by
You were
by
lucky, Dee.
You were lucky.
I
That's
was
right.
very lucky. I was incredibly lucky. I just never realized how lucky I was. I actually look back with some regrets for that, because he would talk to me about different things, but I was too young and didn't have enough common sense to pursue the things that were really important. And I think back now, and I think I would have loved to have known what was going through the mind of a 15-year-old kid on this huge ocean liner as he left home, left his parents and with one sibling, one brother, and made that trip across the Atlantic Ocean and pulled into the harbor in New York and had no clue where he was going, what he was doing, what he was getting into. But he made that trip and he ended up in Chicago, and he ended up meeting Clara. Maybe we could go through some of the pictures,
That would be
and
great.
I'll see if we can maybe explain a little bit and introduce you to a few of the people in the photograph.
Dee, one of the things you told me that was amazing, after seeing all these beautiful photos, you said this was just his hobby. This wasn't even his profession.
This is very strange. When August came over and came into Chicago, he started out working in an organ factory, building huge pipe organs. And I have a few pictures of him in the organ factory and surrounded by workers, and we're in coveralls, and not the man that I knew as a boy. And after he worked there for some period of time, he became an elevator operator in Marshall Field's department store in downtown Chicago. And I did some research online, and I looked and I saw Marshall Field's, some photographs of Marshall Field, and it was a huge building in downtown Chicago. And I'm thinking it was probably 20, 25 stories. And here was this little man that was my great-grandfather that worked the elevator in this store. And it actually served him well, because I found out later on through stories from my other family members that when August worked in the Marshall Field's department store as an elevator operator, he went to a couple of company picnics. There you see August and Clara. That was his wife, Clara. And this was Clara's father, Fred Ruge. So there's my grandfather, and I guess my great-grandfather, and my great-great-grandfather there. But when he worked in Marshall Fields, and they had a company picnic one year, they saw, August brought some of his work in, some of the photographs that he'd been doing, and they saw the models that he used, his daughter Paula and his wife Clara, and they asked him if they would consider being models for the clothing line in Marshall Fields.
Wow. There you
So
go.
if you look at some of the clothing in these pictures, they're, very cutting edge for that period of time. The clothing was, and I know that August and Clara were not well-to-do by any means. They could not afford to buy clothing of that caliber. I mean, if you look at the shoes that August wears and the top hat and the suit, it's all top quality stuff. And I found out that Marshall Fields provided most of the clothing that was used in the pictures because they wanted to use his talents and his wife and his daughter to promote their clothing line. And you see August in a lot of pictures, and he worked by himself, completely by himself. He had a small timer that he put on this glass negative camera that he could get the picture set up, get everything into position, and then he'd set the timer and scurry off and get on the other side of the camera and set himself in position. And the timer would take the picture and he'd go on to the next photograph.
Original selfies?
Original selfies, yay!
This one amazes me when you look at the lamp.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
How did he paint that to look like it's glowing, and then it gradually
Yeah.
gets dimmer as it gets closer to? I just don't
Yeah.
know how he did that.
Watercolors?
Yeah.
It's all watercolors.
And the reflection of it
In the, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
in the Are you sure?
I've tried to do it, and it's
I know.
not
Yes.
easy.
Because when I was first doing photography, they said that was done with oil.
This
No,
one?
no, all
Sure, it was
watercolors.
Mm-hmm.
There's several paintings here that I brought tonight, and if you look at those are all done with watercolors too. This photo in itself is very unique. Like I said, August always put captions and dates and times on the back of the photo. This particular photo had written on the back, "My first date with my girl Clara." I
Wow.
think it was 1907.
Neat.
So he documented his first date with Claire, who ended up being his wife. And she became one of the main subject of his photographs. So this is the photo here, of Brooke at North Avenue in Maywood. That's, I
Long
guarantee it
gone.
doesn't look that way now.
No. Not at all.
Might be out there.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago out by Lombard, and
Is there?
yeah, Portillo's wasn't there then.
Yeah.
No.
Mm.
Maywood, 1923.
That just looks like a painting.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. Can you see okay? Okay. Yeah, they were
There's been a
just-
few of the photographs that I've looked at the location, and I've tried to go back and find those locations and take a picture. This particular picture is Clara, my great-grandmother, and that's my father she's holding. Clara.
Is that your real name too, Dave? Are you Glenn also?
Yeah.
Are you Glenn?
Yes, he's Glenn.
I've been called a lot of things. I've been finding out, I have been placing a lot of these photos online so that I can share them with family members all over the United States. And there are some family members that are still in the Chicago area. This particular picture is Thatcher Woods. And then you'll see other pictures that are labeled Humboldt Park. And when one of my relatives that's still in the Chicago area said, Humboldt Park used to be beautiful, and you'll see it obviously through some of these pictures, but he says, now says the only thing Humboldt Park is good for is if you wanna go in and score a drug deal